Hello, what we're going to be covering in this video is a Java program that uses an array. So we want to write a program that reads a list of integers into an array and displays their sum. We also want to display all the numbers read, each with an annotation giving its percentage contribution to the sum. We want to use a method that takes the entire array as one argument and returns the sum of the numbers in the array. So the dialog that we're going to be using is we're going to ask the user to enter the array size and the integers you wish to sum. So the first number they'll enter is the array size, and then after that will be the integers that will make up the array. And then we'll go ahead and display the sum, and then what percentage each numbers makes up of the sum. So let's go into JGrasp. I've already gone into and kind of created a shell with some comments. So the first thing I did was I just imported the Java util package to get my scanner object, and then we're going to be going ahead and we create a scanner object on line 14 called input. So what we're going to do is we need to populate the array with values. So we're going to go ahead and have a system out .print line, and what we're going to ask the user to do is enter the array size and the integers you wish to sum. Have a question mark, double quote, and then we'll close that statement off. So the first number that gets read is actually going to be will be the array size. So we'll just go ahead and save that as an int size, and that will equal our input dot next int. So that will read in the size of the array. So after we know the size of the array, we can go ahead and initialize our array. So we will go ahead and use int and numbers, and it will equal our new int size. So now we've specified the number of integers that are going to be stored in the array by using the size that was passed in. Then we need to add the integers to the array. So the easiest way to do that is just use a for loop that'll read in the rest of the input inputted by the user. So we'll just go for int I equals 0, and then we're going to read as long as I is less than our numbers dot length. So basically the length function returns the size of the array. However, when the items are placed in the array, they start at index 0. So as you're iterating through each one of the indexes, you want to make sure that when you're using the length of the array, it always needs to be I is less than numbers dot length. And then we'll go ahead and increment I by 1. Okay, so what we're going to do is our numbers and in our array, the numbers found at position 0 the first time through will get set to our next int. So basically what we're doing here in this statement on line 25 is we're iterating through the input that was provided by the user, and we're storing the values that were inputted into each one of our array slots. So we're going to start at position 0. Next time through, we'll store whatever number was entered second in position 1, so on and so forth, until we've gathered up the 5 integers inputted by the user. So the next thing we need to do is, since we are going to be summing up the numbers, we need to go ahead and create a variable that we're going to go ahead and initialize and store the sum in. So we'll just call it a double. The reason why we want to use a double is we're going to be calculating a percentage, and we need a double so that when we do our division, that it will actually come back as a double and it won't do any of that nasty integer division. So we'll go ahead and set that equal to 0.0. And then what we need to do is we need to go ahead and iterate through the array again to sum up the integers in the array. So what I'll do is I'll just Control-C this code down and Control-V it, and instead of this line right here, what we're going to do is, again, we're going to start at position 0 and iterate through the length of our array. And what we're going to do is we're going to just set our sum and add the next item from our array, next integer found at that position, to our sum. So we need to start at using our index as our subscript for our array. So what this will do is it'll read through our array. It'll gather the integer stored at each one of the indexes, and it'll add that to our sum. And then finally, we just need to display the results. So we're going to have a couple systemout.print lines here. So the first one will be the sum of the numbers equals, and it'll be plus sum, which is where our variable, our sum, is stored in, and then we'll just append a period to it. .out.println, and what we're going to do here is we'll just specify the numbers are with a colon. And then what we're going to do next, since we need to calculate a percent for each one of the numbers, I'm just going to go ahead and declare a percent variable. And I want to do that outside of the for loop. If I don't do it outside of the for loop, if it's inside of the for loop, each time the loop runs, that double percent variable will get created. So when you're using a variable within a for loop, if you can declare it outside of the for loop, you definitely want to declare it outside of the for loop. So again, we're going to iterate through our array. This time we'll just specify index equals to 0. Again, within your for loop, you can use any variable names as you're iterating through them. We're going to iterate through as long as index of numbers.length is less than the actual size, and we'll increment our index by 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and first calculate our percent, so that will just equal our numbers at that specific index. So that number at that number in the numbers array at that specific index divided by our sum. And then we're going to go ahead and multiply that number by 100. And then after that, we'll just do what we're going to use is we're going to use the system out printf, so we can go ahead and format our output. So what we want to do is we want to display the number first, which is, and then we want to display the percent. So we're going to display the percent with 2 decimal places to the right of the decimal. And then finally, we need to use the escape character for a new line, because when you do a printf, that does not get added on. It's just like a print statement instead of a println statement. So I'll go ahead and add that on, and then we need to specify the variables that are getting passed in. So the first one is the index or the number at index, and the second that'll be passed in is the percent that was calculated for that index. Okay, so that looks like we have all the code for our program, so we will go ahead and compile it, see what happens. Looks like I got a little compile error there. I forgot to add the semicolon after my double. Say, for instance, if we just go in and we try to run the program without setting our sum equal to 0, we'll go ahead and try to compile it. Looks like we have a little problem here. Cannot find symbol number. Oh, numbers. So we had another compile error. So I will go ahead and correct that compile error, and we'll go ahead and run it. And variable sum might not have been initialized. So that's why we need to go ahead. We need to initialize the variable before we actually use it. And then again, there's the same error down below. So now we will go ahead, recompile again, see if we're error free, and we will go ahead and run. So the first number is 5, the number of integers in the array, then I'll enter 7, 12, 8, 15, and 11, hit enter. So what we have is the sum is 53. The numbers are 7, which is 13.21%, 12, 8, 15, and 11. If we go ahead and look what our output, 28.3, 20.75 for the last two, 20.75. So it looks like we get the correct output. The other item that I want to show you is just say, for instance, instead of specifying less than, where your index is less than your number's length, if you specify less than or equal to, I'm going to rerun the program and show you what actually happens. So if we go ahead and run the program, again, I'll enter the same numbers, 5, 7, 12, 8, 15, 11. What you get is you get an array index out of bounds exception. So what it's doing is it's trying to read, trying to find an item that's being stored in index 5 of your array. But there is not an item in index 5, so that's why that array index out of bounds exception gets thrown. And it's a very common exception that you'll see when you're working with arrays. So I'll just go ahead and correct it, rerun it one more time, make sure it runs correctly. So we'll enter 5, 7, 12, 8, 15, and 11, hit enter. It looks like it's running correctly, and we get the correct output. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video, just show you a program that actually reads numbers into an array from the user and goes ahead and manipulates the numbers in that array. So we will talk to you later.